buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. Yo, it's game day, stadium packed, feel that rush. From Boise to App State, man, we never hush. Rocking the colors, yeah, we bleed that pride. Cinderella stories, watch our dreams collide. Late nights, bright lights, we grind every play. Underrated talent, we gon' make them say, who's that team when we come to town? Representing for the schools that wear the crown. We in the G5 high, buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. Yo, it's game day, stadium packed, feel that rush. From Boise to App State, man, we never hush. Rocking the colors, yeah, we bleed that pride. Cinderella stories, watch our dreams collide. Late nights, bright lights, we grind every play. Underrated talent, we gon' make them say, who's that team when we come to town? Representing for the schools that wear the crown. We in the G5 high, buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. We the ones they are. The ones they can't skip. Fighting for respect, it's a tough road ahead. But we pack that heart and we never dread. Late hits and big plays, we bring in the heat. Watch out for the G5, we can't be beat. From the MAC to the Sun Belt, we don't back down. In this football jungle, we wear the crown. All the doubt is sleeping, but we making noise. In the G5 hive, we the realest boys. When the clock's ticking down, we the ones to believe. One play, one chance, we gon' make them achieve. From the sidelines to the end zone, hear that roar. In the G5 high, we always wanting more. We in the G5 high, buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. So raise your flags high, let them wave in the air. In the G5 high, we the squad that's rare. With heart and grit, we rewriting the script. In the world of college football, we the ones they can't skip. Yeah. We in the G5 high, buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. Yo, it's game day, stadium packed, feel that rush. From Boise to App State, man, we never hush. Rocking the colors, yeah, we bleed that pride. Cinderella stories, watch our dreams collide. Late nights, bright lights.
Forward, gets out of a tackle, now turns on the Jets, up to the 30, the 20, 10, 5, Torrey Horton back to the end zone.
28-yard play, guess who? Body, up the middle, making another move, to the outside, 15, 10, end zone again.
Keeps it, nice move by Brown, he's got space, he's got 6. 35-yard touchdown for Byron Brown, a record-setting night for the South Florida quarterback.
So far, a little bit of a high snap. Jeanty right up the middle. Jeanty has room. Ashton Jeanty, give him 6.
Second and long. Lagar tries to fit it in. Roto, it does. Roto stays up. The Suns offense 4-3 wheels. Incredible effort for Roto.
The G5 Hive. All G5, all the time.
Welcome to the G5 Hive Live, and we are excited to bring you the G5 college football coverage you love each and every week. I am Luke, and I am proudly joined by my co-host, Justice. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're watching us on X, please give us a follow, a like, and a retweet. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please leave a rate and review. And don't forget, the G5 Hive merchandise stores is now live. You can get that down here at the link below you're watching us on YouTube or X, that'll also be in our YouTube video comments as well as pinned on our X page at the bottom of the screen here. Justice?
Going on, man?
Season is winding down. How's it going?
It's going good. I was gone all week, so I didn't get to watch nearly as much football as I normally do. I was down in Charlotte, North Carolina, at some dirt track races, so I got to watch a little bit during the week. I watched absolutely zero. No, I take that back. I did watch. It was an FCS game though, the Montana State and UC Davis game. That was the only game on when I got home from the race on Saturday night, or when I got back to the hotel Saturday night. But yeah, going good.
I did not get to watch as much football as I wanted to this weekend. My mom had something that she was like, "Hey, can you help with this?" And I was like, "All right." So helped with that. I was still able to watch more football than what you're describing there. But anyways, let's just get right into it. It's week 11 in the rearview mirror, but we got to recap it. And let's start off here with the G5 Hive Players of the Week. Shall we?
Absolutely. Let's go.
All right. So, freshman Offensive Player of the Week, running back Telly Johnson Jr. in Northern Illinois carried the ball 23 times for 141 yards and 2 touchdowns as he led the Huskies to a MAC victory over Western Michigan in Week 11. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Western Michigan previously unbeaten in the MAC.
Yes.
Telly was a 3-star recruit from Georgia. He was named first-team All-Conference and team MVP in both his junior and senior seasons. Congratulations, Telly.
All right, for our freshman defensive player of the week, defensive end, Kyron Duhan, UTEP. Kyron had 9 tackles, 5 solos, 1 pass breakup, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks to lead the Miner defense in their victory over Kennesaw State in Week 11. Kyron was a 3-star recruit from Texas. He finished his senior season with 77 tackles, 23 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. Congrats, Kyron.
All right. My offensive player of the week is none other than running back Trey Stewart, Jacksonville State. Trey had 1 reception for 15 yards and carried the rock 34 times for 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. None were more important than his 11-yard touchdown up the gut, which proved to be the game winner in the Gamecocks' 44-37 win over Louisiana Tech. Congratulations, Trey.
My offensive player of the week, quarterback Caton Hauser, East Carolina. Caton has been on fire since getting the starting quarterback job with 13 touchdown passes in the last 3 weeks. Caton had a huge game this week, going 17 for 22 for 343 yards and 5 touchdowns through the air, while adding another 52 yards and another touchdown on the ground to lead the Pirates to a victory over Florida Atlantic in Week 11. Congrats, Caton. My defensive player of the week, defensive end Jordan Lawson, Louisiana. Jordan had 6 tackles, 5 solos, 2.5 tackles for loss, and 2.5 sacks for the Raging Cajuns in their victory over Arkansas State. The victory leaves Louisiana undefeated in Sun Belt Conference play and in first place in the Sun Belt West. Congratulations, Jordan.
All right, my defensive player of the week is linebacker Randolph Kapai, New Mexico. Randolph had 15 tackles, 10 of which were solo. He had 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, and 2 pass deflections in the Lobos' 21-16 win over San Diego State. What was really impressive is Marquise Cooper ran the ball 35 times, and while he did get 123 yards, I'm not so sure he broke a run that was more than 10 yards. Maybe they're close to the end he did, but that defense did a great job of keeping him contained all game. But this was a great showing for that New Mexico defense, led this week by Randolph Kapai. Congratulations, Randolph. All right, Justice, what does the Swarm need to know? What's our news and notes from the week?
So as we get closer to the end of the season here, you get more coaches looking for new jobs. This first one was a bit of a shock. Kennesaw State fires head coach Brian Bohannon. Current offensive coordinator and quarterback coach Chandler Burks was named the interim head coach. Bohannon was 72-38 at Kennesaw State. He led the Owls to 4 FCS playoff appearances and their first FBS victory over Liberty just a few weeks ago. This one just seems like a real head scratcher to me. And what the school says happened and what other folks say happened aren't the same thing. The school, the athletic director said that Bohannon resigned. Bohannon came out and said absolutely did not resign. They told me there was going to be a change of leadership, so I was fired. I don't get this. I don't understand it. I don't know what their expectations were in year one of the FBS. I mean, like,
Well,
hell, they
even mentioned like, something about it's not the football season like historically that we were hoping for. Like last year, pretty much in our Worker Bee series, they mentioned like, hey, we like purposely put out makeshift offenses to keep red shirts and to keep people around. Like, so like, what were you expecting last year? And then your first year in the FBS, again, what were you expecting? And I interrupted you, Justice, but you're about to say, hey, you just beat the undefeated Liberty Flames as your first win. Like, what are we doing? Oh, yeah. I mean, I get people want to fire coaches early to get ahead of it, but, like, no offense to Kennesaw State, but I don't know, like, who you're trying to get, like, what big hire that you're trying to get out in front of. It doesn't make sense from that standpoint. It doesn't make sense from to just come up from the FCS to the FBS. There's a lot of things that just don't make sense. And I don't know. I didn't check out the notes. Yeah, you do have it in there. Kennesaw State defensive tackle, a great defensive tackle. It's like, I'm out.
Yeah, it just I don't know what their expectations were, but I thought that they from basically from the beginning of the year up to that Liberty game, and since that Liberty game, like they've been looking better. There's been progress made. I don't know that their roster wasn't ready to be to be a competitive FBS team. If that's what they thought it was, and I think they were mistaken from day one. But man, it just I don't know. It just seems really it could really set them back, right? Because like you said, we'll get to it in a minute, but they can have other players that are better players that are just going to leave, and it wasn't a great roster to begin with, and so they're going to hire somebody new. They're going to start probably from scratch and basically have the same type of season for another probably 2 or 3 years. I don't know. It's just a very strange move by Kennesaw State. And it doesn't make any sense to me. But in other coaching news, Florida Atlantic has fired defensive coordinator Rock Bellantoni. Brandon Harris will serve as the interim defensive coordinator. They also fired associate head coach and offensive line coach Ed Warner. These kind of moves are going to happen where guys are trying to save their quote head coaching job, and they're going to get rid of some assistants in an effort to do that. Southern Miss, who fired their head coach a couple weeks ago, has now fired offensive coordinator Chip Long. Some more Kennesaw State news. We talked about this just a few seconds ago, but Kennesaw State defensive tackle Tamarius Puda-Walker is entering the transfer portal. He was a star on that defensive line for them. And he's posted. He's gotten offers from UNLV, Memphis. He's gotten UCF.
UTEP, UCF.
He's a quality player. He's going to land somewhere good, and I don't expect that to be the end of the Kennesaw State exodus after the firing of Coach Bohannon. Some positive coaching news. Connecticut head coach Jim Mora picked up a $10,000 bonus this week after the Huskies got their 7th win of the season. He has added $85,000 in bonuses this year as a result of the season for UConn, and it's their best season in history. Not in history, but their best season since 2008. So their best season in recent history. So way to go, Jim Moore, UConn. Hard place to, I think, win and recruit. But Jim's getting it done this year for the Huskies. Now, getting to some injury news, some player injury news. Army quarterback Bryson Daly did start this week against North Texas. That was a very low-scoring game. I think it ended up like 13-7, I want to say. Something like that. Bryson Daly missed the previous week. There was some concern whether he would play against North Texas with that. He had a foot issue, which he had surgery for. But he did start. Army got the win, stay undefeated, and they have a bye this week, which is great news. Get Bryson more healthy, get that whole team more healthy, and they have a big matchup next week against Notre Dame in 2 weeks. So hopefully,
I was
Army
very shocked to see
pull the
Bryson
upset.
Daly play this last week, and maybe they thought we have the bye week so he can get a little bit of rest before the big Notre Dame game. But then I was also surprised to see him run the ball for like whatever it was, 35, 37 times, 33 times, whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean, that good news, I guess, for his health, right? That means he must be pretty healthy.
Yeah.
UMass quarterback Tyson Fumakan is out for the season, and that means it's either going to be Ahmad Haston or AJ Hairston, both, I believe, redshirt freshmen. They will compete to be the starter this week. My expectation is that it would be Ahmad Haston. He's the one that kind of led them in the spring with Tyson out, and he's also the one that's come in more often when Tyson's been out this season. UConn quarterback Nick Evers got injured in the game versus UAB. Joe Fagnano took over. No updates on that, but I mean, just looking at box scores, I haven't watched the UConn game. It looks like Joe's outplayed Nick Evers this year, but they keep going back to Nick, so we'll see what they kind of do moving forward. Sam Houston quarterback Hunter Watson suffered an injury, not this week, but the week before. They had a bye this past week, but he should be good to go for Sam Houston in their matchup this week. Florida Atlantic quarterback Cam Fancher was carted off the field this past week, and he's out for the season with a broken collarbone. Luke, did you get to watch the Florida Atlantic game?
Yeah, I got to watch a little bit of this game, and it just seemed like there was a lot of late hits. Like there were several of them, like 3 or 4, and this one ended up. This one was a late hit and ended up in a broken collarbone. So like nothing was called. It just seemed I don't know. It was a weird game, and it just seemed to be like when FAU was on offense, these late calls. And I mean, I also didn't really recognize any major late hits when FAU wasn't on offense, but it just seemed like something that kept coming up. So I don't know. It just sucks that there's a late hit, in my opinion, on the quarterback, and it resulted in an injury. And then again, no penalty, nothing. And it wasn't like that was the first of the no calls. Like that was like the 3rd or 4th one.
Well, look for redshirt freshman Cassine Wiseman to start the rest of the way in Cam Fancher's place. UTEP quarterback Skylar Locklear is back from concussion protocol, and he played this past week. Some more Florida Atlantic news. Running back CJ Campbell, he did exit the game this past week. However, he was able to return. However, his running mate, Zuberi Mobley, missed the game this week, did not play. We'll have to monitor the situation throughout this week to see if Zub Mobley can come back for the Owls. Northern Illinois running back Ontario Brown got injured this past week. He was seen on crutches, but it does sound like it doesn't sound like it's like too serious. Sounds like he will probably be back at some point, and that's what allowed the offensive freshman of the week, Telly Johnson Jr., to kind of get his run. So we may see some more Telly Johnson in this next coming week if Ontario is not able to go. Ohio running back Anthony Tyus III made his return this past week. Utah running back Razul Faison exited the game early this past week. I think he is a little bit banged up with a knee injury, I think it was, but he should be back for their game against Hawaii. Temple wide receiver Dante Wright was said to be good to go in week 11. They had a bye this past week. So we haven't heard anything official, but we do expect that Dante Wright will most likely be back for Temple this week. Fresno State wide receiver Raylan Sharp missed their game against Air Force, and it's not looking good to see him again here in week 12. So don't expect to see Raylan Sharp out there for the Bulldogs this coming week. Tight end Holden Willis made his return from his one-game absence. I believe he was also in concussion protocol. So it's good to see that. But wide receiver Omari Kelly missed the game this week. They do have a bye in week 12, so hopefully they can both get healthy, or Kelly can get healthy and return in week 13. New Mexico wide receiver Luke Wysong, who had missed the previous week, made his return this past week. He looked good to go. And then just, I don't know, maybe an hour ago or so, or an hour and a half ago, some devastating news out of App State. Wide receiver Caden Robinson, he posted on his Twitter account that he has suffered a season-ending injury. And the sad thing is that it abruptly ends his college career. He's out of eligibility. His plan is to rehab, get healthy, and pursue a professional career. So we certainly wish Caden Robinson, who's a friend of the show, we did an interview with him over the summer. We wish him a speedy recovery and all the best wishes moving forward. All right, let's get to the top 25. So the top 25 poll came out yesterday, the AP poll, the playoff poll, or the playoff brackets will come out, I believe, tomorrow night. But we got 3 teams from the G5 in the AP top 25. A little bit disappointing, though. Boise State, despite their win over Nevada, and that wasn't like they crushed Nevada, but they dropped a spot to number 13 in the poll, despite that win. Positive news, Army moves up 2 spots after their win over North Texas from 18. They're now up to 16. And then Tulane, with their win over Temple, makes their debut at number 25. So we got 3 teams in the top 25. And then there's 2 other G5 teams that received votes. Louisiana comes in at number 29 with 14 votes. And UNLV comes in at number 30 with 10 votes. I didn't really look to see. My guess is it had to be the upsets in the power conferences that caused somebody to really jump, and that's why Boise fell from 12 to 13. Yeah, it looks like Ole Miss. I guess the Ole Miss win over Georgia is kind of what kind of did them in, because they didn't drop Georgia out of the top. Georgia comes in at 11. They fell 9 spots, and Miami fell 8 spots to 12. And Ole Miss is the one that kind of jumped up in front of Boise State. They moved up to 10th from 16th. So be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see how this kind of plays out. BYU still undefeated. They are the leader in the Big 12. If they lose a game, the next Big 12 team looks like Colorado at number 18, and then you got Kansas State at 20, and those are the only 3 Big 12 teams in the top 25. So if BYU were to lose, it'll be interesting to see if Boise doesn't jump them. Not sure. BYU's remaining schedule is Kansas, Arizona State, and Houston. I would guess that Arizona State would give them be the best opportunity for them to lose. I mean, they barely beat Utah this past week with a 1-point victory, and then I don't know. Did you see the Utah athletic director complaining about the refs on the after the press conference? Yeah.
Yeah, there was
But it
actually
did
quite a bit.
it didn't really affect the play. That didn't affect that particular play, but still.
Well, the other part is too, like that would have put them at what yard line would that put them at? I mean, there's still a fair amount of yardage to go.
Yeah.
Feel free to stop them anywhere in between there. Granted, again, never put the game in the ref's hands, et cetera, et cetera. But you kind of put yourself in that predicament, and then, like I said, you've got the rest of the field to work with there. Feel free to stop them anywhere in between there if you'd like.
I'm hoping BYU loses because I want to see Boise get the bye. And I'm hoping what I hope happens is BYU loses, and both Army and Boise State go undefeated. Because I'm wondering if both of them can't potentially jump over top of BYU at that point. So yeah, the big test of that theory will be Army having to beat Notre Dame in 2 weeks. So hopefully the Black Knights can pull it off. Well, let's get to the what we call the real poll, the G5 top 25 from Heroes Sports. If you're watching on YouTube, you see it on the screen. But I'll run down the top 25. We are voters in this poll. I don't know. There's probably 15 other media folks, beat reporters. They're also voters in this poll. I would tell you it's probably the most comprehensive G5 top 25 poll around. Number one in this poll, no shocker, Boise State. Number 2, Army. Number 3, Tulane. Jives with the AP poll there. Number 4, UNLV. Number 5, Louisiana. Number 6, Western Kentucky. Number 7, Memphis. Number 8, Navy. Number 9, JMU. Number 10, Sam Houston. 11, Georgia Southern. 12, Jacksonville State. 13, Marshall. 14, Colorado State. 15, Liberty. 16, Bowling Green. 17, San Jose State. 18, Toledo. 19, Connecticut. 20, North Texas. 21, Miami. 22, Texas State. 23, Ohio. 24, Northern Illinois. And 25, Fresno State. Our votes are very close to these. Like, there's only one big difference, and that's Bowling Green. We have Bowling Green much higher than the consensus. It was the same last week. It's the same this week. We have Bowling Green at number 7, while here they are at number 16. Other than that, there isn't much more than 2 spots difference. I know we have JMU at 11. We don't have them at 9. And we don't have Fresno State ranked. We had Buffalo ranked at number 22 in our votes. But other than that, we're fairly close here. I think Fresno State was one of the last 3 out for us. So again, even though we didn't have them ranked, they were close for us. But yeah, the big outlier is Bowling Green, and that MAC race is pretty interesting because there's going to be a lot of teams with a similar record, and so it's going to be interesting to see how all those tiebreakers work.
What 4-1 guys, and
yes,
and actually Western Michigan, they were at 22 or so last week, 23 last week, something like that. They were the team that fell out for us, and then we added.
Fell out for us and fell out for the consensus poll as well. But yeah, I mean, you got
who did we put in there? Oh, we put in San Jose State. That's who we put in.
You got 1, 2, 3, 4 teams at 4-1, and then another 2 teams at 3-2. So there's potential for a big log jam there in the MAC, depending on what happens here the next few weeks. So it'd be interesting to kind of see how the MAC plays out. You look at some of the other conferences, Mountain West. It really looks like a 3-horse race, I guess, to see who's going to be in that conference championship between Boise State, Colorado State, and UNLV. I still feel like it's going to be Boise State and UNLV. The Sun Belt, Louisiana have to have an epic collapse to not be the Sun Belt West champion. They are the only undefeated. They have a 2-game lead over Texas State. And And Arkansas State, they own the tiebreaker, and I believe they own the tiebreaker over South Alabama as well. So Louisiana, like pretty much assured they're going to be the Sun Belt West champion. And then the Sun Belt East, there's still 4 teams that could potentially win it. I think we'll get a much clearer picture this week. Georgia Southern is currently the leader at 4-1. Marshall's also 4-1, but Georgia Southern owns a tiebreaker over them. And then you have ODU and James Madison both at 3-2. The interesting thing here is Georgia Southern owns the tiebreaker over Marshall and James Madison. So if Georgia Southern wants to lose again, they still have a half game lead over Marshall and James Madison. However, they lose again and Old Dominion goes undefeated the rest of the way, then Old Dominion would win the Sun Belt East since they hold the tiebreaker over Georgia Southern. So yeah, the Sun Belt East is still kind of wide open between those 4 teams. Move over to Conference USA, and again, it really looks like a 3-horse race. I guess Liberty, still potentially has a shot, but you got Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State both undefeated. Sam Houston at 4-1 and Liberty at 4-2. And then if you go to the American, it's Army and Tulane both undefeated, and Navy with 1 loss. Again, I guess technically Memphis and East Carolina, potentially are still in it. They only have 2 losses, but it feels like that conference is going to come down to Army, Tulane, and maybe Navy. But yeah, so
Tulane, I believe Tulane and Navy play this week. Or
they
have
do.
a bye and they play the following week or something.
No,
Yeah,
they play.
so
They play.
big game.
Tulane and Navy play this week. Tulane ends the season with Navy and Memphis. So, yeah, two big games for them to help kind of determine they went out. Obviously, they're in, right? They lose to Navy and Navy wins out, then Navy's going to get in because of the tiebreaker. So, yeah, some interesting conference races.
Well, undefeated teams through 11 weeks. The only undefeated team in the G5 is Army Black Knights. They have a bye in week 12 before their date with Notre Dame. So we will see if we can make it through an entire season with a G5 team being undefeated. Honestly, at this point in the season, the fact that there is any team that is undefeated, that's a pretty good feat in itself at this point. You've got injuries, this and that. So congrats so far to the Army Black Knights. Now on the other side, we've got winless teams through 11 weeks. Kent State, Golden Flashes, they were able to do it again. They were able to lose. What was it? I'm trying to remember. 44-0, 40 to I don't remember. It was a lot to 0. They've got Miami of Ohio on Wednesday. Again, they're the only winless team in the G5. Their current losing streak is now up to 18. I believe I saw somewhere, I don't know if it was Brett Murphy or tweeted somewhere that Kent State has yet to lead a single second
Oh wow!
so far this season. I'll have
they
to
lost
find it
41 to
later.
nothing.
41-0. I'll have to find it later. I'll try to retweet it out from our account. But I think there's something dumb stat of like Kent State has not led for a single second this year. But anyways, our G5 bowl count currently up to 19 teams in the G5 are eligible for bowls. Those are Army Black Knights, Navy Midshipmen, Memphis Tigers, Tulane Green Wave, UNLV Rebels, Louisiana Raging Cajuns, Sam Houston Bearcats, Boise State Broncos, James Madison Dukes, Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, Toledo Rockets, Colorado State Rams, Yukon Huskies, Georgia Southern Eagles, San Jose Spartans, Ohio Bobcats, Liberty Flames, Marshall Thundering Herd, and the Jacksonville State Gamecocks.
There were 5 new additions this week. San Jose, Ohio, Liberty, Marshall, Jacksonville State were the 5 teams to become bowl eligible this week, and to bring that count up to 19. The one thing, and I tried to look, and Jacksonville State, I believe this is their second year in the transition, right? And or their second year in FBS, not necessarily their second year in transition. And I tried to find if they could actually make a bowl, but the school put out that they were bowl eligible. So I'm going to take the school's word for it, and that they if that they could actually go to a bowl game. They certainly deserve it. We saw them go to a bowl game last year, but them like JMU, both those teams got to go to a bowl game because there weren't enough bowl eligible teams. But yeah, kudos to Jacksonville State and Sam Houston for making bowl eligibility already.
All right. Well, let's get into the nectar of the good stuff. This week's topics. Week 11, week in review. Let's see here. My screen is frozen. Give me 1 second. All right. Midweek games, G5 matchups, Bowling Green at Central Michigan. We had Bowling Green on top, 23-13. Connor Bazelak, 207 yards passing, 1 touchdown. And then we had Harold Fannin was not able to get the 100 yards receiving, unfortunately. So kind of a bummer there. But
Central Michigan
this was
on
our
the third string QB.
Yep. This was our Tuesday. What did you deem it? Tight end Tuesday.
Tight end Tuesday, because you got Harold Fannin Jr. and Tanner Koziel, 2 of the best tight ends in the G5. They played okay, but they didn't play up to their quote standards.
Yeah, we were talking about. I think my question was, hey, does Harold Fannin score over 100 yards or get over 100 yards this week? You're like, most definitely. I mean, the weather was kind of crappy. If I'm remembering correctly.
It was raining. Yeah, it was pretty rainy.
Then Miami of Ohio at Ball State. Miami of Ohio pulls out the 27-21 win. Samoza 280 yards passing, 1 touchdown. Bowick had 8 receptions for 171 yards and 1 touchdown. Justice, did you get to watch?
I did. That was the better game. And I think we mentioned it last week that I think the spread was over 7.5. I think we both felt that Ball State could keep that game close, and they did. They had a chance to win the game. That was definitely the better game. They had a couple mistakes that kind of cost them, but Miami really kind of kept Braden Sloan, the all-purpose running back there for Ball State, in check. He didn't do hardly anything on the ground. 16 yards on the ground, and only had 1 catch. So it definitely seemed like he was a focal point of the Redhawks defense. But really, the story of the game, I guess, was the turnovers. Caden Samoza with 2 interceptions, and that's kind of the difference in the game. But yeah, it was a good game. Definitely the better of the 2. And like you said, the weather in both those games, it was raining. It was raining pretty hard. And I'm surprised there weren't more fumbles. And there was no fumbles in the Miami game. And then in the Bowling Green Central Michigan game, there were a few, but I'm surprised there weren't more. There was 3 fumbles by Central Michigan. Tyler Jefferson fumbled twice. Marion Lukes fumbled once. And the Lukes one's kind of funny because the announcers just made a comment about, hey, we haven't had any fumbles yet in this game, which is a shocker given the conditions. And then Marion Lukes proceeded to fumble the ball. So
I believe in jinx. I'm a baseball player, played college baseball. I believe in jinx. I believe in superstitions. So that one's on the announcers. Let's see here. That was Tuesday. Let's go over to Wednesday. We had Ohio at Kent State. Ohio wins 41-0. Parker Navarro, we didn't know if he was going to play coming into the game. He ends up going only 142 yards. Tyus comes back, has 84 carries and a touchdown. Owen had 4 receptions, 61 yards. There was a 96-yard kickoff return for a touchdown in this one. It was all Ohio from the beginning. Honestly, I guess for the score, they could have just stopped after the first quarter. They win 10-0 instead of 41-0.
Yeah, I mean, Kent
I don't know
State's
if
on
there's
their
much to really tackle here.
on their 4th string quarterback, and so unless they can get some people back and healthy, it doesn't look good for them to actually get a win this year. Like you mentioned, they play Miami, Ohio, and they play Akron and Buffalo. Maybe the Akron game, maybe is their best shot. But I mean, if they're on their 4th string quarterback, I don't know that they really have a shot to win a game this year.
Going to be tough. And then a game that we were kind of talking about last week that caps off our Wednesday night is Northern Illinois at Western Michigan. I think I picked Western Michigan to pull it out, but Northern Illinois, pretty good team. They end up winning this game 42-28. Don't score anything in the first quarter and then proceed to put up 21 points in both the second and third quarter. We got Telly Johnson, breakout, 23 carries, 141 yards, 2 touchdowns. The rookie of the, or not the rookie, but the freshman of the week. Rudolph shows up big in this one. 6 receptions for 74 yards. Again, we just talked about the MAC a little bit ago. This drops Western Michigan to 4-1 in the MAC. Northern Illinois, a surprise 2-3, with a couple games to go.
Yeah, Hayden Wolf had 2 interceptions in the game. That certainly didn't help the cause. The Western Michigan defense didn't play very well at all, especially in the second and the third quarter. Obviously, the first quarter, they shut them out. The fourth quarter, I don't really count that because the game's already over at that point. But yeah, that Western Michigan defense was definitely a little bit disappointing this past week.
Right, and then Thursday we had 2 games here to highlight. App State at Coastal. Coastal's able to pull this one out 38-24. Honestly, kind of looked like Coastal was going to run away with it. There was a red zone interception by Aguilar there at the beginning, or no, maybe it was a fumble. I'm trying to remember. There was a lot of turnovers in this game. I think it was an
Yeah, Joey had 2 interceptions and he lost a fumble too.
So I think he might have lost the fumble first, and then he had 1 interception that, it was behind the wide receiver, but the wide receiver touched it, which then went to the defender. But Joey could actually run the ball quite a bit. He opened the game with a big run, but they had no answer for Coastal Carolina on the ground. Bennett did really well. He had 3 touchdowns, or I think he had 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, he had 3 touchdowns.
But Joey Aguilar, 226 yards passing, 1 touchdown. Marshall with 28 carries for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's been getting a lot of run here the last 3. I think this is the 3rd straight week where he's had quite a bit of rushes. And then, like we talked about, Caden Robinson goes out, I assume, with torn ACL, but he had 5 receptions for 76 yards and got his 2nd touchdown of the year.
Yeah, and that's when he injured it. So I caught the very end of this game that night, but he got the ball on the 1 or 2 yard line, and then you could tell he picked that leg up and kind of hopped into the end zone, fell down the end zone, and then he immediately was grabbing that knee. Yeah, and then they had to limp him off the field, or he had to give him help off the field, and he kind of limped off. I didn't at that point. I didn't think it was going to be that serious because like he was able to limp off, but yeah, I definitely would appear to be some type of knee injury for him.
And then the nightcap for this one, Florida Atlantic at East Carolina. East Carolina dominates this one 49-14. Kaden Hauser has 6 touchdowns on the day. He had 5 passing, 343 yards through the air. I don't know if you caught this one, but I'm trying to remember his first name. He was wearing a black hoodie under his pads. Smith, first name for ECU, or Smith was his last name for ECU, but like he had one of those
Anthony
bonehead,
Smith, wide
Anthony
receiver.
Smith. He had one of those bonehead, like Hauser could have had 7 total touchdowns on the day. He had a long play. I can't remember if it was the third quarter or in the second quarter, and he goes to dive for the end zone. Didn't need to. I don't know if he's looking at the scoreboard and looks like somebody's there or whatnot, but he like dives for the end zone. I mean, it was kind of rainy and whatnot in the game, but like he could have just ran normal and got into the end zone, but he dove and he came up like they called it a touchdown. Reviewed it. He was short. So it was, yeah, that ended up being a Rajay Harris touchdown. But yeah, could have been a bigger day. And East Carolina, since making the switch there to Hauser, has been
and the new head
cruising.
coach.
Yep, has been cruising. They've been putting up points. I don't know if they're just free and easy or what it is, but they're launching it. And Justice, I believe you're probably pretty happy since this is like your closet team that you're a big fan of. That like they're fun. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I don't mind ECU. They're the next closest team to me, other than Old Dominion. So, they're about 2 hours away. Yeah, and ODU plays them frequently, so it's always good when both teams are good and they play each other. A little bit of a rivalry.
All right, and then to wrap up our midweek games, Friday night we had 2 games. Let's first start with Rice and Memphis. Memphis pulls this one out 27-20. EJ Warner, we'll get to him a little bit later in our 2020 guys, but he has a pretty good game, 246 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Mario Anderson continues his trek through the G5 as being one of the top running backs in the G5, 25 carries, 144 yards, and touchdown. And then Sykes, the wide receiver there for Rice, has been quietly having a really good year. He has 6 receptions for 76 yards and a touchdown in this one. Quiet at the beginning, and then kind of put it on more than that second half there for Rice. I did not get to watch much of this game. I didn't know if you got to watch a lot of it.
I caught the very end.
Okay.
And Rice had a chance to win. They just couldn't. They couldn't get it done. Couldn't get a stop there at the end. Memphis got a first down to kind of salt it away, if you will. But yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that Rice kept it as close as they did. Memphis has kind of been a bit of a disappointment this year. We had high hopes for them and App State both. Those are probably the 2 biggest for me disappointments on the season so far.
And then the last game, I got to watch a good part of this. I think I missed like the first 4 drives total, but New Mexico at San Diego State. New Mexico pulls out the 21-16 win. Danny O'Neal for SDSU has 195 yards passing, 1 touchdown. Eli Sanders, 16 carries, 173 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Great back-to-back weeks there for Sanders. And then Napier, 9 receptions, 63 yards for San Diego State. Honestly, like I said at the beginning, we were talking about defensive player of the week. Marquez Cooper, you knew he was going to get the ball a lot. He got the ball a lot. He just didn't have these big runs. And I think they kept him under like 7-8 yards for most of the game. He might have had one run there in like towards the beginning of the fourth quarter that he was able to pop for close to 10, but they were able to hold him, which was good. Honestly, this New Mexico defensive line has been kind of getting manhandled lately, and it was nice to see them step up this week. I just want to know what's going on with San Diego State's field. The last 2 weeks, I've been able to watch their games, and it looks like they're playing in like almost like kitty litter. It's just like dirt, like most of the time. It's like dirt with sprinkle of grass. It's like playing between first and second base on a baseball field. It just almost seems like the old Raiders stadium. I mean, not like actual sand like that, but it's just so sandy. And then there's like pockets of grass. We're like, oh, there's grass there. It just doesn't seem like it'd be something super fun to play in, run in. I didn't play football, so I don't know if you need the long spikes or the short spikes, whatever works best. But I can't imagine just running in sand. So
the one thing that, I mean, to me, for New Mexico, that they still have a chance to become bowl eligible, which I think is like amazing. I think folks' expectations for New Mexico weren't very high this year. In my opinion, they far exceeded what the expectations or what my expectations
absolutely.
were. And the fact that with 2 games to go, they still have an opportunity to be bowl eligible is pretty amazing. Chances of them becoming bowl eligible aren't great. They got to beat Washington State this week, which is a pretty tall order, I think. But if they do it, then they got Hawaii in the last week to become bowl eligible. That'd be a pretty remarkable season in Bronco Mendenhall's first year if they're able to do that.
All right, now let's get into our Saturday featured G5 versus G5 matchups. First, we've got Texas State at Louisiana Monroe. Texas State pulls this one out 38-17. I mean, let's just talk about this one. Brad Jackson, true freshman.
McLeod comes out. I guess he wasn't healthy, and they put Brad Jackson. Is that kind of what happened? And then he just ran the ball.
I mean, I did not get to watch. Pretty much, I didn't get to watch anything before like 5 p.m. So I didn't get to see this one. But yeah, Jackson, 17 carries, 126 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. It looked like, just looking at the play-by-play, like McLeod was in there, and then Jackson came in, and then McLeod. It was kind of like this hodgepodge of utilization. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes for the rest of the year. Or does Texas State just say, "Hey, we're 3-2, we're not going to win the Sun Belt"? I don't know. I find it hard to believe that they would do that. But I think the more stunning thing here is just that Brad Jackson was the next guy up. In that rotation.
It wasn't RJ Martinez, or it wasn't PJ Hatter. It was Brad Jackson, true freshman Brad Jackson.
And
it
sounds like
shocking.
Jackson. Yeah, it sounds like Martinez and Jackson were splitting reps during the week. So I mean, that was interesting.
It makes me wonder what happened to PJ Hatter. Like, he's already told the coaches he wants to enter the portal, or I don't know. Like, just a weird situation, because he was a pretty highly rated recruit for Texas State, and it looks like he's not only was he passed by Martinez, who came in fall camp. Now he's also being passed by a true freshman. So, yeah, interesting development there for Texas State. If they go with Jackson the rest of the way, looks like it'd be kind of run heavy. They ran the ball with him, and then Deion Hankins ran the ball a lot too, which surprises me, because ULM's defense had been pretty good up until these last few weeks. But we saw them get torched. Was it last week? I think as well. So UNLV after that, I think the hot start, they were 5-0. Now that they've lost 3 in a row, so they'll need to do some regrouping here in the last few weeks for UL Monroe, and that you have to get another win to get to bowl eligibility.
And then we have Liberty at Middle Tennessee. Liberty wins 37-17. Nick Valiato looked pretty good in this one. 22 of 33 for 263 yards, 2 touchdowns. Quentin Cooley, 24 carries, 136 yards on the ground. Like we mentioned earlier, Holden Willis comes back. And this one has 5 receptions for 81 yards. The story in this one was Liberty scores 20 in the second quarter. They win by 20. And Middle Tennessee just so many penalties in this game. And there was some calls about some fans curious about some play calling, this and that, but it's just been a whole bunch of penalties. And it just sounds like Middle Tennessee just needs to get more reps here. Obviously, it hasn't been the season that they wanted. 3-7 overall, 2-4 in CUSA. But I do believe, with the new coaching staff, just need one more win to exceed how many wins they had last year. Is that correct, Justice, or sound about right? So Middle Tennessee, they've got a very, very winnable game this week. I'm trying to remember who it is, followed by FIU their last week.
They had Middle Tennessee had 4 wins a year ago.
Okay, so they need to get to one more to be there, but they've got FAU's their last game. I cannot remember who they have this week.
They're on a bye this week, and then they have New Mexico State and Florida International is their last 2.
So depending on what FIU team they get, they could win both games. I think it helps having New Mexico State at home. I expect New Mexico State to run the ball quite a bit. But, let's see here. Army, North Texas. This one I was very excited to watch. I thought that it was going to be a little bit more points than we had. I also wasn't sure who was going to be at quarterback. There was a lot of questions here, and then when you hear Bryson Daly's going to play, I'm like, okay, here come the fireworks. It's just what we thought. 14-3 was the score of this game. Daly had 36 carries for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chandler Morris had 2 interceptions. I believe both of them were in the red zone, if I'm remembering correctly. So that Army defense played big in this one. I don't even think that they attempted a pass in this game. So this was all running the ball with the Daly. Again, coming back from that surgery, thought he would maybe be run the ball, maybe not that effective, but hey, he carried the ball a lot, and he single-handedly helped this Army team move that ball down the field. I believe I saw one stat in the game that they had the ball for I'm trying to remember. It was 19 or 17 plays for 90 some yards and ate up 13 minutes. Something dumb, and they're kicking a field goal. Or they were kicking their extra point. It was just something crazy. That's okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's totally Army. Anyways, getting on to our next game, we had San Jose State at Oregon State. San Jose State wins 24-13. Eget 395 yards passing, 1 touchdown. Anthony Hagerson for Oregon State has 30 carries for 121 yards and a touchdown. And then our boy Nick Nash, 6 receptions, 161 yards and a touchdown. Dude is on fire. He's pretty much the Ashton Jeanty of the receiving world. We will talk about him in our 2020 lineup, but this passing attack keeps launching the ball down the field, keep having success. San Jose's 6-3 on the year, 2-3 in MAC play. I don't.
It
Anything that you
surprised
want
me.
to talk about here?
I didn't think. I expected it to be a better game, and I didn't expect San Jose State to beat Oregon State. To be honest with you.
I did not either. And you'd think that to beat Oregon State, you'd probably do better on the ground than you would passing the ball. But obviously, San Jose State, they're pretty good at throwing the ball. And honestly, Eagles' game is kind of surprising based off of some of the other games this season. Other games. Arkansas State at Louisiana. Louisiana wins this one big time, 55-19. Move to 5-0 in the Sun Belt, 8-1 overall. Wooldridge has 264 yards passing, 1 touchdown. Washington 123 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Corey Rucker for Arkansas State leads the way with 6 receptions for 73 yards. Anything you want to talk about in this one in particular?
One thing real quick, a technical issue. I just got a message from StreamYard. Looks like something's going on with the YouTube feed. And it's not streaming right now for some reason. And so if you're watching on YouTube and you can hear me, go to Twitter if you want to continue to watch the live feed. It looks like there's some kind of issue with StreamYard and YouTube. And then we'll get the full video posted later. But it looks like they're having issues right now. Something going on with YouTube. Again, shocked by the score. Louisiana just continues to go out and win, and they do it in dominant fashion. That defense is playing lights out. They look like clearly the best team in the Sun Belt right now.
I think in this one, I'm trying to remember, but I think backup quarterback. Am I blanking on his name? Transfer quarterback who went in there. Help me
To
out.
Arkansas State.
Arkansas State. Yeah.
Tim
I
McLean.
think he got in there. Timmy McLean. I think he got in there as well in this game, if I am not mistaken. Only a couple passes.
Yeah, he did. He was 2 for 2 for 25 yards.
So Arkansas State. I mean, it kind of seems like, okay, maybe Timmy comes in there at some point. When does he come in there? But Arkansas State seems to be holding steady with, hey, it's Rainer's job here. Another game, Nevada at Boise State. This one was a lot, like you said, a lot closer than we kind of anticipated. This one is Boise State 28, Nevada 21. It's on the blue turf. And I think they would, blow them out, I guess. But Nevada's been playing pretty well. Their record doesn't show it, 3-8, 0-5 in the Mountain West, but they've been playing pretty good football and better than I thought they would. Boise State moves
Offensively,
to 8-1, 5-0.
defensively, I'm surprised that Boise State didn't score more. But Maddox Madsen did not have a very good game after having a lights out game the week before.
Yeah, and my computer froze up here. Brendan Lewis, 188 yards passing, 1 touchdown. He also had a touchdown on the ground for 32 yards. Ashton Jeanty, 34 carries, 209 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. Jaden Smith adds a touchdown, leads the way again, 4 receptions for 57 yards for Nevada. And then Boise State tight end, Matt Lauder, 5 receptions, 61 yards, and a touchdown, leading the way there for Boise State. Man, I hope Boise just doesn't trip up here in the next couple weeks. It just seems like they've had the last 2-3 weeks some close games that just closer than comfort, I guess, for me. I'm like, I hope nothing gets ruined. I want to see them in the the playoffs and whatnot. But anyways, anything you want to add there?
No, yeah, hopefully, they got Ashton Genty back on track. But it almost feels like the last couple weeks, the 2 weeks previous, he kind of lost a lot of momentum in the Heisman race.
You talk about close. UNLV goes to Hawaii, wins 29-27. Brent Shager, 282 yards, passing, 3 touchdowns. He's been doing a lot of damage on the ground this year, more than previous years. Haj Malik Williams, talk about quarterbacks doing damage on the ground. He had 19 carries, 122 yards, and a touchdown. And then Ricky White had a quiet first half, turns it on there towards in the second half. 7 receptions, 128 yards, and a touchdown. UNLV stays in that Mountain West race at 3-1, waiting for a Colorado State loss is what they kind of need to jump in there. And so Utah State at Washington. This one, I did not watch much of. I just watched, I don't know, maybe a couple minutes just to kind of see how it was going in the second half. At that point, it was 21-7, I think it was. But yeah, Utah State loses this one, 49-28. They are 2-7 on the season. Spencer Petras has been throwing the ball a lot. He had 45 pass attempts in this one, but only 208 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then we talked about Faison getting hurt early on. Turner, the true freshman, I believe, or is it a redshirt freshman?
Turner. I don't know off the top of my head.
He's been getting, like, when he gets his opportunities, he's been doing well. So I'm excited to see him in the coming years. But Faison goes out, should be back this next week. But yeah, that is our week 11. It's now in a rearview mirrors. We're done.
The one thing I want to say, in the Mountain West, Colorado State doesn't play Boise, doesn't play UNLV in the regular season, and so I mean, I just kind of they avoid probably the 2 best teams, and as a result, they might find themselves in the championship. They don't have a
one reason why I picked them to be in the Mountain West championship game against Boise State.
They have Wyoming, Fresno State, and Utah State left. So it's just interesting that whole invite the Pac-12 and let them, or the Pac-2, and let them be a quasi part of our conference, but not really. Is what did this, right? Because you get rid of those 2 teams, and they probably play Boise State and UNLV, or at least one of them for sure. So yeah, very, very interesting turn of events, I guess, for the Mountain West.
All right, now we've got our sights turned to week 12. And our midweek G5 games, we've got Ball State at Buffalo, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. What do we think? Justice, what you got this week?
I think Buffalo. I mean, they've been up and down too, but I think they've been a little bit more consistent. Although, if Ball State can not turn the ball over, then they have a chance to win this game. But I think I would take Buffalo.
Buffalo is favored by 4.5. They are at home. Total 53.5. Give me Buffalo in this one, and I think Sean Dolak and that Buffalo defense is what does it here for them tomorrow or today, if you happen to be listening to this on Tuesday. Next, we have Western Michigan at Bowling Green. I got Bowling Green in this one. What say you, Justice?
Yeah, I like Bowling Green. They're solid on both sides of the ball. Western Michigan defense not so great. So I think it's going to be 2 losses in a row for the Broncos. Unfortunately, Bowling Green's favored by 8.5. Both of these teams are 4-1, so one of them is going to move to 5-1, and I think Bowling Green is the one that's going to do it.
Central Michigan at Toledo. Central Michigan on their third string quarterback. Toledo 3-2 in the MAC. Central Michigan 1-4. Toledo opens up as 4.5 point favorites.
14.5.
Oh, what did I say?
4.5.
Oh, 14.5. Yeah. Total 50.5. I like Toledo in this one. Defense, offense, Tucker Gleason, Jerron Newton. Just Central Michigan being down to the third string quarterback hurts them in this one. Toledo's already pretty good. Give me Toledo.
Yeah, it should be a blowout. I mean, and if you're looking at it, I believe all 3 of these games are at the same time. I believe they all start.
Sorry, I forgot.
They all start at
7.
7.
7 p.m. Eastern. For all
And
those
so
games.
if I'm going to pick just one to watch, I think I'd lean Ball State Buffalo as my first choice, and then Western Michigan Bowling Green. I don't think I would watch any of the Central Michigan Toledo game just because I don't expect it to be a good game.
I guess it depends on what you want to watch. So, like, I anticipate Bowling Green to handle Western Michigan. The score might not show it, but I feel like they will dominate the game. But it's 4-1 versus 4-1. Or do you watch, I think, a good football game? Ball State, Buffalo. It just happens to be 2-3 in the MAC versus 3-2 in the MAC. Which one do you want to watch? And I side with you, Justice. I would want to watch Ball State at Buffalo. Moving on to Wednesday, we've got Kent State at Miami of Ohio. Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Miami of Ohio favored by a big number, 30. Over under, or not over under. Total is 45.5. So they think that Kent State can get 15.
Yeah, I don't know about that. not unless I don't know. I guess I should look it up to see what the status of Tommy Ulatowski is. But if he's not back, then I don't think so. If he's not back, I was just looking to see. Yeah, he was. Well, he wasn't on the injury report this past week, so I think they said that he was banged up, but he wasn't on the official injury report. So I don't know if he's back. I think they can score 15 points. If he's not back, then yeah, probably not.
All right. We've got Akron at Northern Illinois Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Akron 1-2 or 1-4 in the MAC. Northern Illinois 2-3 in the MAC. Ontario Brown, we'll see if he can make his comeback in this one. If not, I feel like they'll be able to run the ball pretty well. Akron, if you haven't been paying attention, this will be your chance to watch them on CBS Sports Network. They run this 2-quarterback system where they've got Finley there pretty much between the 20s. So, like, if you're going to score a passing touchdown, it's going to be kind of a long passing touchdown, which Norton has on the season 36 receptions, 667 yards, and 6 touchdowns for the Zips. And then they bring in another quarterback. I'm trying to remember his name off the top of my head. I want to say Williams.
Taj Bullock.
Taj Bullock. he comes in there and he runs quite a bit. More of an speed, like an option RPO, where they pretty much either he's keeping it or a handoff. So you'll get to see that 2-quarterback system. I like Northern Illinois. I like Northern Illinois at home. The books also like Northern Illinois. 15.5-point favorites. Over under a 45.5 in this one. Give me Northern Illinois.
Yeah, it should be all Northern Illinois.
Eastern Michigan at Ohio, 7 p.m. Eastern. Ohio favored by 10 points, 49.5. This one will be a good game. I
think it'll be a closer
again,
game
we're
than
gonna do
that.
the same thing. Which game to watch on a Wednesday? It would be this one on ESPN2.
Yeah.
Eastern Michigan at Ohio. Eastern Michigan 2-3 in the MAC. Ohio 4-1. Ohio's got a pretty good defense. Eastern Michigan not too bad themselves. Cole Snyder, if you're not familiar, he is a transfer from Buffalo. Over at Eastern Michigan. This season, he's been running the ball pretty well. Thrown for a couple hundred a game. I believe he's also in our 2020 guys, so we'll talk about him a little bit later. Yeah, I think this one's going to be closer than the 10. And I don't know if I want to say that Eastern Michigan would win this one. I like Ohio. I like Parker Navarro. So I'm going to stick with the Bobcats in this one.
But if I'm betting the spread, I think I'm going to take Eastern Michigan. I don't think Ohio wins by 10. And again, all 3 games start at 7, but this is definitely the one to watch. I think the Eastern Michigan Ohio game.
All right, Thursday standalone game, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. East Carolina at Tulsa. 3-2 East Carolina, 1-4 Tulsa. When it comes to conference play, ECU favored by 14 on the road. Over under 61.5. Give me ECU and the points in that spread. Like Tulsa is going to get carved up through the air. We'll talk about it later in the show about Peyton Hauser, Chase Sewell. Grab like ECU. I anticipate them tossing the ball around the yard. Peyton Hauser had 6 touchdowns this last week. I anticipate another great game from him.
Yeah, I think East Carolina continues their winning streak and great offensive play against Tulsa.
All right, Friday night, wrap up our games here with Wyoming at Colorado State. 2-3 Wyoming in the Mountain West. Colorado State's 4-0. In this one, Colorado State's favored by 10 at home, coming off the bye, over under 47.5. But Wyoming, they seem to be clicking. They make the change at quarterback. Things are looking a little bit better. Harrison Whaley came back.
Yeah, they're coming off the bye too.
Wyoming's also coming off a bye. I kind of like Wyoming in this one. Like, I don't feel good about it, but like, I feel like Harrison Whaley's well enough that I think they're going to ride him this game, and I think Wyoming can pull this one out. Obviously, for my take on Colorado State being in the Mountain West championship game, that would hurt. So secretly, I want Colorado State to win this one, but I would not be surprised if Wyoming's able to pull this one out.
Yeah, I agree.
And the game that I'm going to be watching is because
a lot of offense.
Fireworks. A lot of offense. Honestly, the Wyoming Colorado State game will be interesting, just for the Mountain West play. But North Texas at UTSA, both teams 2-3. North Texas favored on the road by 2 points. An
2.5.
I expect some fireworks. North Texas throwing the ball a lot. Owen McCowan throwing the ball a lot. What are you excited about?
Yeah, I'm excited to see a high-scoring game. Both of these offenses can score a lot of points. I don't think either defense can be mistaken for a great defense. I think I'm interested to see if we see Devin McEwen back for UTSA. He hasn't played the last few weeks. Be interested to see if he's going to be able to come back after this bye. It kind of feels like it might be a who has the ball last wins kind of game.
Yeah, so I'm real excited for this one. I'll probably be watching both again. Start at 8 p.m. Eastern. I think I'll probably be watching more of this UTSA North Texas game just for the offensive fireworks. But do know that Wyoming Colorado State has big implications there for the Mountain West.
Yes.
All right. Now let's get into our G5 versus P4 matchups. Thank you, SEC, for scheduling your cupcakes this late. UL Monroe has Auburn Saturday, 12:45 p.m. Eastern. Auburn's offense isn't great, but their defense is pretty good. I expect them to pull this one out against UL Monroe.
Auburn's favored by 24. But we saw last year, right? New Mexico State and Diego Pavia come in and beat Auburn. And so I don't know. Maybe it's a tall order, but just maybe UL Monroe can score the upset. I'm with you. I don't count on it happening. But if you tell me I got to pick one of these two games for the upset, that would be the one I pick. Auburn's not great. ULM I think is much better than New Mexico State, and so I think if ULM plays like they did in the beginning of the year, they can give themselves an opportunity, a chance to win this game.
I mean, Auburn couldn't get away from Diego Pavia going over to Vanderbilt. They've seen enough of that guy after last year. And
he's 3-0 against Hugh Freeze.
Then we've got New Mexico State at Texas A&M Saturday, 7:45 p.m. Eastern. Good luck. I mean, Texas A&M has some good athletes. Maybe not the season they're hoping.
That's going to be a rough game. I don't look for New Mexico State to have much of a shot. Texas A&M's favored by 39.
And New Mexico State kind of been running the ball quite a bit. I don't think they'll be able to run the ball very much against Texas A&M.
Yeah, the Texas A&M defense is pretty good.
All right. Well, let's move over to our Saturday feature G5 versus G5 matchups. We've got Tulane at Navy Saturday, 12 p.m. Eastern. Who you got in this one?
I like Tulane. Navy hasn't looked great. They lost to Rice, but yeah, I think in Tulane it looks like one of the better teams in the American. They play great offense. They have Darian Mensah, super accurate. Makai Hughes run the ball. The defense plays well as a unit, and I think Tulane is going to win and make it to the American championship game to face off against Army. Although it'd be really cool, I guess, to kind of have to see Army and Navy play each other twice, once in the conference championship and then once again in the Army-Navy game. But I think Tulane's gonna put an end to that this week with a W.
Like I mentioned earlier, Navy 5-1 in the American, Tulane 6-0. So this will be a big game. Tulane's favored by 6.5 points on the road. Over under of 54.5. I like Tulane in this one, but I'm trying to remember what's the stipulation with the Navy Army game. Is it just you can't make a bowl if you're not at 6 wins? By that, is
Before
that the
that
only
game,
thing?
yes, yeah,
So,
that
like, I
game,
can't.
that game doesn't count for anything. The Army Navy game doesn't count for bowl eligibility. It doesn't count towards the conference. It does.
Okay.
It doesn't count towards anything. You know, and so yes, they have to have both teams have to have 6 wins before the Army Navy game.
So let's just say hypothetically, Army beats Notre Dame. And then you've got the Notre Dame, or then you've got the Army Navy game. Let's say Navy beats Tulane in this scenario, and then at that point, you have your conference championship game because
And they play each other then.
So then you've got the conference championship game, Army versus Navy, and let's just say Navy beats Army, and that's
bad because.
Should this just brings out this just hypothetical? Like, I don't really care that it's G5 and then like a P4 theoretical. Like, do you want to make the conference championship game if you're going to be like punished for losing in the champ? Like, and then it's just magnified there for the.
Well, for the G5, you got to like that argument doesn't hold water. For the P4, I guess you could. I think it's a different argument, but for the G5, you've pretty much got to go undefeated and win your conference. So not making a G5 conference championship game is not good for a G5. So
yeah, but then it's like getting there and then like I don't know. It just seems weird.
But
like
the interesting thing, if like my scenario plays out where both Boise State and Army went out the rest of the way through the championship games, then the quote playoffs are selected right after championship games. So in theory, let's just say Army and Boise both get ranked higher than the Big 12. They both get a bye. But then Army plays Navy in the Army Navy game and loses. Well, they can't undo it at that point, right? Because it's already been decided. But can you imagine, like the man, like that'd be kind of crazy if that were to happen. But again, the big hurdle to that is Army has to beat Notre Dame next week. So we'll see.
All right, next one: Coastal Carolina at Marshall, Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Marshall 4-1 in the Sun Belt. Coastal Carolina 2-3 in the Sun Belt. Marshall 8.5-point favorites. Over under 56.5. Marshall's been clicking lately. Coastal's been able to put up some points, but the defense has been porous. Give me Marshall in this one. I honestly don't know about the 8.5. I don't like the spread at 8.5, but I do like Marshall.
Yeah, the Coastal Carolina's been very much a Jekyll and Hyde, right? They played good, and then they had where they played really, really bad. They looked better, last week. I don't feel like Marshall has looked pretty really great in any game, but they've found a way to win. They did blow a 20-point lead late in the game against Georgia Southern, but Marshall certainly found a way to win. But this, I mean, I expect Marshall to win, but I wouldn't be shocked if Coastal wins.
All right, James Madison at ODU. Justice, you'll be at this one, I assume, right?
I will. It's a home game for ODU. It's a 4 p.m. start, and the game is on ESPNU. So if you haven't had a chance to watch ODU or JMU, it's on ESPNU. This is a huge game for both teams. Like the loser of this game, pretty much is out of it in terms of winning the Sun Belt East. And ODU really needs to win the game for bowl eligibility. They've got to win 2 of their last 3. JMU's already bowl eligible, so this is a pretty big game in the Sun Belt for sure. And I'm hopeful that ODU can beat JMU. We've lost, I think, the last 2 to them. when we joined, when we started football way back when, and we joined the CAA, we were undefeated against JMU, and then when JMU moved up to the FBS, we haven't beat them yet. So I'm hoping we can get that win against JMU this weekend and keep our Sun Belt Conference championship game hopes alive.
So JMU 7-2 overall, 3-2 in the Sun Belt. Old Dominion 4-5 overall, 3-2 in the Sun Belt. JMU favored by 4 points, over under 52.5.
The interesting thing is, I think when it first opened up, it was ODU favored by 5.
Oh, wonder what happened.
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure. I mean, I think that was a bad line, but I want to say I'm pretty sure ODU opened up as a favorite.
Well, hopefully you got a good question to ask, and we can hear about it next week. And for your sake, I just hope we don't see a lot of streamers in this one.
Yeah. Well, fortunately for me, like where my seats are, unless the camera guy, the ESPN camera guy, is going to throw a streamer, I can't get hit with one because my back is I'm in the last row. The press box is above my head, and the camera guy is literally right below me or right above me. So hopefully I shouldn't get hit with any streamers, but yeah, I don't want to see a lot of purple streamers on Saturday, that's for sure.
So, Justice, how about you wear your G5 hat to the game? I know you have been.
I don't wear it to the game, but I bring it with me, and I do wear it. I do wear it to the press conference, but
you get right in front of that camera, and
you just jump up in front of them. Yeah,
and
I've thought about that. I've thought about that.
Get some free. Do that real quick for sure.
I just don't know. I don't know that I can get high enough to get in front of him. But I've thought about like turning around and like trying to do something crazy to get his attention.
All right. Boise State at San Jose State, Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern. This should be a good one. San Jose State, kind of been an up and down year. 2 quarterbacks in and out, 3-2 in the Mountain West. Boise State, 8-1 overall, 5-0 in the Mountain West. Boise State favored on the road by 13.5, a 61.5 over under. I like Boise State in this one, but I think just how Boise State's been playing lately, I feel like they've kind of been playing with their food a little bit. I don't like the 13.5. Like, I feel like San Jose State can keep it closer than that this week. Obviously, got to stop Nick Nash. We talk about, or at least I talk about, how Nick Nash is like the Ashton Jeanty of the wide receivers. You've got Ashton Jeanty on one side, you've got Nick Nash on the other one. This will be a fun one.
Yeah, should be a good game. Definitely one to watch on Saturday.
All right, South Alabama at Louisiana, Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Louisiana 5-0 in the Sun Belt. South Alabama 3-2. Louisiana favored by 8.5, 58.5 over under. Give me Louisiana in this one. South Alabama I've been super excited about the offense, but it's just kind of inconsistent this year. They'll have some super quick drives and then some drives like, oh, that's the team that I kind of thought we could see all year. But Louisiana's been solid all year. I like Louisiana in this one.
Yeah, I think a lot's going to depend on Gio Lopez. I mean, they had the bye week, so you hope that he is healthy and able to come back.
That's right. He had his concussion.
I was just looking now to see if there was any kind of updates. I don't see anything right now. But yeah, I think that's going to be a key to this game. Gio Lopez is going to need to come back for South Alabama to really have a shot to beat Louisiana. And I don't know it's a great shot even with Gio, but I definitely think they need him in order to have that chance to beat Louisiana.
All right. And then our last Saturday to feature G5 versus G5 matchup, Washington State at New Mexico, Saturday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 4-6 New Mexico, 8-1 number 21 Washington State. Washington State favored by 13, over under 72.5. They expect some fireworks. Watch this would be the Mateer versus Dampier show. Dampier leading the Lobos in rushing with 872 yards and 13 on the ground, throwing 2,418 yards and 11 touchdowns. They are combined for 24 total touchdowns. Luke Wysong came back this last week. He has 55 receptions for 700 yards and a touchdown. I expect Washington State and John Mateer to throw a lot and to score a lot on New Mexico. Like I said, defense hasn't been great overall. This last week was really good. And New Mexico, Dampier's been their offense, and Eli Sanders turned it on here the last couple of weeks. We'll see if he's able to keep that going for a third straight week. This one has the potential to be a really fun game to watch, given this over-under total of 72.5.
Yeah, and another game if you like offense. Definitely a game to tune in. I don't know there'll be a ton of defense in this game, but yeah, another chance. Great chance, like you said, see two great quarterbacks in John Mateer and Devin Dampier.
All right, that brings us to our G5 2020 guys. Quarterbacks. 2020 guys, these guys are in the top 20 in pass attempts and the top 20 in passing yards in the G5. Number 1, Chandler Morris, North Texas. He leads the G5 in pass attempts, passing yards, passing completion per game, and total touchdowns. So I want to make sure I got that part right, though. Leads the G5 in pass attempts, passing yards, passing completions per game. All those were per game, not just the passing completions. Starting off a little rocky here for me. Number 2, Jalen Kitna, UAB, averaging 300 passing yards per game. Him and Chandler Morris are the only two averaging 300 or more per game. He is third in the G5 in completions per game with 25, and he is tied for the most turnover-worthy plays in the G5 with 19, which is impressive.
Yeah.
He's started like the last 4 or 5 games. I'm trying to remember, I think 4.
Yeah.
So to be up there in the G5 with the most turnover-worthy plays, congratulations. Number 3. This is why we're excited. Chandler Morris, North Texas, is number 1. Owen McCown, UTSA, number 3 on this list. He is 4th in the G5 in touchdowns with 20. He's got the least amount of turnover-worthy plays for these 2020 guys with 9. So they take care of the ball and throws a lot. So number 1 versus number 3 for these quarterbacks. Excited for that one. Seth Hennigan comes in at number 4. Memphis. He's actually got the most big-time throws in the G5 with 25. Spencer Petras, Utah State, comes in at number 5. He has been averaging the second most completions per game in the G5 with 27. Joey Aguilar comes in at number 6. App State tied for 5th in the G5 in touchdowns with 19. Tied for the highest average depth of target of the 2020 guys with 11.4 yards. And he's tied for the most turnover-worthy plays in the G5 with 19. And if you've watched much App State, it just seems like there's a little bit of the ball bouncing the wrong way, and then it just seemed like everything that went right for Joey last year is like swung the opposite direction this year, and it's gone like drastically. Like everything's been bad for him in terms of fitting in the ball in tight windows and such. Devin Dampier, New Mexico, comes in at number 7. Tied for last of the 2020 guys for pass completions per game with 19. However, he has the most rush attempts per game of the 2020 guys with 11. Most rushing yards per game of these 2020 guys with 88. And he's tied for the highest average depth of target of the 2020 guys with Joey Aguilar with 11.4. So he might not be throwing the ball a whole bunch or making a lot of completions with those 19, but he's making them count. Braden Shager, Hawaii, comes in at number 8. He's tied for 5th in the G5 in touchdowns with the 19. He's tied for 2nd of the 2020 guys in rushing attempts per game with the 9, which was kind of shocking. So that's why I wanted to point that out. 2nd of the 2020 guys in rushing yards per game with 51. Number 9, Tucker Gleason, Toledo. He's got the least amount of pass attempts per game of the 2020 guys with 31. He's tied for last of the 2020 guys for pass completions per game. There with Devin Dampier with 19. Cole Snyder, Eastern Michigan. I said we were going to talk about him a little bit later. Here we are. He comes in at number 10, averaging 232 passing yards per game, tied for 2nd of the 2020 guys in rushing attempts per game with 9, giving you 46 yards per game on the ground. Mikey Keene, Fresno State, comes in at number 11. He is the statue of the 2020 guys with 1 rush attempt per game. So he does all of his work through the air. E.J. Warner, Rice, I mentioned he would be talked about later. Here we are coming in at number 12. He's averaging 230 passing yards per game. Jalen Rayner, Arkansas State, comes in at number 13, averaging 226 passing yards per game, which is the least of this 2020 group and the least amount of touchdowns of this 2020 group with 8. Number 14, Nicholas Vadiato, Middle Tennessee, 6 in the G5 in big-time throws with 18. And number 15 on the list is Caden Somoza, Ball State, averaging 228 passing yards per game. Lowest average depth of target of the 2020 group was 7 yards. Running backs. Again, top 20 for total touches, top 20 for total yards. If you make it on both of those lists, you make this list this week, cut it down to 12. Running backs, everyone on this list is at 97 yards per game or more with at least 18 opportunities per game. So all these guys were really great. Honestly, you could add one more, but he's only played 1 game. Harrison Whaley, again, had that bye, but had that 27 touch, 170 yards, 1 touchdown game. Ashton Jeanty, Boise State, he's got the most touches per game in the G5 with 26, averaging 202 total yards per game. First in the G5 in touchdowns with 23, leads the G5 in missed tackles force with 90. I think he can make it up to 100 by the end of the year. Running out of time, but I think he can do it. Number 2, Trey Stewart, my offensive player of the week. Jacksonville State, 17 touchdowns, which is 2nd in the G5, tied for 4th in the G5 in missed tackles force with 54. Makai Hughes, Tulane, comes in at number 3, he's 4th in the G5 in touchdowns with 13. Number 4, Mario Anderson, Memphis, averaging 17 rush attempts and 4 receptions per game. The 4 receptions per game is actually 2nd in the G5. His 25 yards in the receiving game is also 2nd in all of the G5 for our running backs. Marquez Cooper comes in at number 5. I don't believe he hit it. He might have got close, but he's getting really, really close to 1,000 yards rushing this season. So I think if he did not get it last week, he was really, really close. I think he will get it this week. Ahmad Hardy, Louisiana, comes in at number 6, 9 touchdowns as a freshman, 2nd in the G5 in missed tackles force with 70. Again, Ashton Jeanty on a different level with a 90, a freshman, Ahmad Hardy with 70.
Cooper needs 35 yards to get to 1,000.
All right, so he should get there because he'll probably get 35 touches in the game. Dean Connors, Rice, comes in at number 7, averaging 12 touches per game from the running game, 5 from the passing game. Thus, he's averaging the least amount of rushing yards per game of these 2020 guys with 67 per game. On the flip side, he's averaging the most in the receiving game of the 2020 guys with 35. He's actually leading the G5 in receiving yards per game. Number 2, like I mentioned, is Mario Anderson. It's 25. Number 8, Avery Morrow, Colorado State. Number 9, Quentin Cooley, Liberty. Number 10, Rasul Faison, Utah State. He's tied for the least amount of total yards per game of this group with 97, which is still pretty good. Tied for fourth in the G5 with missed tackles forced with 54. Big drop off. Ismail Mahdi, friend of the podcast, Texas State, he comes in at number 11. He's averaging 98 yards per game. However, he only has 3 touchdowns on the season. And then Terran Stewart, Bowling Green, comes in at number 12. The least amount of touches per game of this group with the 18. Tied for the least amount of total yards per game with the group with 97, with Rasul Faison. And third in the G5 in missed tackles, fourth with 55. Wide receivers, again, only 11 in this week. All receivers here are averaging 8 or more targets per game, 5 or more receptions per game, and 75 or more yards per game. These guys are in the top 20 in targets and in the top 20 in receiving yards. You make both those top 20s, you make this list, there's 11 guys. Excuse me. Nick Nash comes in at number 1, San Jose State. The only guy averaging double-digit in targets per game with 15. He's averaging 9 receptions per game, which is what only some are getting targeted per game. Averaging 128 yards per game. He's the only one averaging over 100 yards per game. Star asterisk Jalen Royals is also averaging 119. We'll see if he's able to make it back for maybe senior day here in a couple weeks. Has 13 touchdowns on the year and the second highest average depth of target of this group with 13 yards. Number 2, Ricky White, UNLV, tied for second in the G5 in receiving touchdowns with 10. Caden Robinson, App State, comes in at number 3. He's fourth in the G5 in receiving yards per game with 92. Only 4 wide receivers are averaging 90 yards or more per game, and Caden Robinson is one of them. Justice will have to talk afterwards, given that he is done for the season, if we will have him eligible for this going forward. But other than the unlucky touchdown performance, Caden Robinson's been a solid staple of this segment each and every week for all 11 weeks. Corey Rucker, Arkansas State, comes in at number 4. Number 5, DT Sheffield, North Texas, comes in at number 5. He's tied for second in the G5 in receiving touchdowns with 10. Only DT and one other from this group has an average depth of target under 8. His ADOT is 6.7 yards. Who's that other guy who's got the ADOT under 8? It's number 6, Jamal Pritchett, South Alabama. He's got an ADOT of 7.8. These two, when I'm talking about these two, DT Sheffield and Pritchett, also have the highest YAC of the group with 8.2 for Pritchett and 8.7 for DT Sheffield. Drawn Newton, Toledo, comes in at number 7. He's tied for second in the G5 in receiving touchdowns with 10. Devontae Ross, Troy, comes in at number 8. He's third in the G5 in receiving touchdowns with 9. Camden Benjamin, Tulsa, comes in at number 9. Number 10, Luke Wysong, New Mexico. And number 11, Omari Kelly, Middle Tennessee. He's averaging the least amount of yards per game of this group of 75. He has the highest average depth of target of this group, 14.8. Moving over to the tight ends, 2020 group, we don't do 20. I know it would be riveting if we did. So we just do the top 5 in targets and receiving yards. And this has kind of been the same the last 4 weeks or so, 3-4 weeks. Maybe moving 4 and 5 around. This is the same as last week. We've got Harold Fanon Jr., Bowling Green, coming in at number 1. He's averaging 9 targets, 8 receptions, 114 yards per game. He's got 6 touchdowns. Those 6 touchdowns are the most in the G5 from the tight end position. Who also has 6 touchdowns is number 2, Tanner Kozel, Ball State. He's got those 6 touchdowns, and he's averaging 7 receptions on 9 targets and 70 yards. Number 3, Holden Willis of Middle Tennessee. He's averaging 5 receptions on 7 targets for 75 yards. He's only got 3 touchdowns on the season. Dorian Fleming, Georgia State. He comes in at number 4. He's averaging 4 receptions on 6 targets for 45 yards per game. He's got 2 touchdowns on the season. And number 5, Terrence Carter, Louisiana. He's averaging 4 receptions, 4 targets, and 62 yards per game. And he's got 4 touchdowns on the season. That's going to do it for our offensive G5 players this week, our 2020 players. Justice, what do we got for the defensive side of the ball?
All right, we will start off with the defensive ends or edge players. These guys are top 5 in havoc rate after week 11. Havoc rate is a combination. It's a calculation using sacks, tackles for loss, stops, etc., and quarterback pressures. Basically, trying to figure out how many havoc play, if you will. I guess stands for what it is. So defensive end edges. Number 1, Mike Green, Marshall. He is the only player on this list that's been there every single week. I think it's been as low as 3, but he's been pretty high. He's been number 1 the last several weeks. He had 3 sacks again this past week. Leads defensive ends in sacks with 12. He has a havoc rate of 17.5%. Number 2, defensive end, Eric O'Neill, James Madison, havoc rate of 16.2%. He has a rush win rate of 15.7%. Number 3, I believe his first time on the list this year, Ahmed Hassanian, Boise State, havoc rate of 14.6%. And he ranks 3rd in sacks with 10. Number 4, defensive end, Bradley Weaver, Ohio, havoc rate of 14.3%. He has 31 quarterback pressures on the season. And rounding out the top 5, defensive end, Elijah Robinson from Hawaii, havoc rate of 14%. And he has 32 stops, which is basically stopping the opposing offense on 3rd or 4th down. And that ranks 2nd among defensive ends. Moving over to the defensive tackles using the same criteria of havoc rate. Number 1, defensive tackle Darius Alexander from Toledo, havoc rate of 10.8%. He has a rush win rate of 11.5%. Number 2, RJ Jackson, Tulsa, havoc rate of 10.3%. He has 18 stops on the season. Number 3, Anthony Hawkins, Bowling Green, havoc rate of 10.2%. He ranks 1st among defensive tackles in sacks with 5. Number 4, Patrick Jenkins, Tulane, havoc rate of 10%. He has 18 quarterback pressures on the season. And coming back to the list this week, I believe this is his 2nd time on the list, Soani Toa from San Jose State, havoc rate of 9.5%. And he has a rush win rate of 10.9%. Now, moving over to the linebackers, these are the top linebackers and tackles per game among the G5. It's been these same 5 guys. I feel like this is the 3rd, maybe 4th week in a row. The order between 2 and 3 has been the only thing that's really changed. And this week they're tied. But number 1, Sean Dolak, Buffalo, having a tremendous season, averaging 11.89 tackles per game. And his missed tackle rate is 3.6%. That's pretty freaking phenomenal. Awesome year for Sean Dolak. Number 2, it's a tie at number 2. Linebacker Travion Barnes, Florida National, averaging 11.11 tackles per game. And he has 11 quarterback pressures on the season. Tied with Travion Barnes for 2nd is Sean Dolak's teammate, Red Murdoch from Buffalo, also averaging 11.11 tackles per game. He has 47 stops on the season. Number 4, Colin Ramos, Navy, 9.56 tackles per game. He also has a pretty low missed tackle rate of 9.5%. And rounding out the top 5 is Jaden Yates from Marshall, averaging 8.89 tackles per game. He has 25 stops on the season. Moving over to the cornerbacks, number one, before I get to that, so cornerbacks and safeties, who we'll be talking about in a minute, they're all ranked according to adjusted net yards per coverage snap. Basically, it's a metric telling you how they're doing when they're targeted. So you're looking at, like, how many completions are made against them, how many yards get made against them, how many interceptions they get, those types of things, and dividing that by the number of coverage snaps they play. But number one and around three is a really good number for the NFL. All these guys we're going to be talking about are well below that, and when we get to safeties, they're all in the negative. The only cornerback in the negative is number one, cornerback Deshaun Peele, Navy, adjusted net yards against of negative 0.216, and he has 4 pass breakups on the season. Number two, cornerback Donovan Platt, Army, adjusted net yards against of 0.122, and he has a quarterback rating against of 45. Number three is cornerback Terrence Spence from James Madison, adjusted net yards against of 0.176, and he ranks first in interceptions among quarterbacks with 5 interceptions. Number four, Rashawn Pleasant, Tulane, adjusted net yards against of 0.186. He has a quarterback rating against of 31. And rounding out the top 5, cornerback Anthony Johnson Jr., Western Kentucky, adjusted net yards against of 0.224, and he averages 4.4 tackles per game. Moving over to the safeties, again, same metric, adjusted net yards against per coverage snap. A new number one, safety Tyrone Lewis Jr. from Louisiana, adjusted net yards against of negative 0.379. He ranks first in interceptions among safeties with 4. Number two, Jerron Manning, Old Dominion, adjusted net yards against of negative 0.361, and he has a quarterback rating against of 13.9. Number three is safety Jacob Thomas, James Madison, adjusted net yards against of negative 0.287, has a quarterback rating against of 3.8. Number four, Tyrone Lewis's teammate, Tyree Skipper from Louisiana, adjusted net yards against of negative 0.255, and he is tied with Tyrone Lewis interceptions. They're both first among G5 safeties with 4 interceptions. Rounding out our top 5 and new to the list this week, Malik Dixon Williams, Connecticut, adjusted net yards against of negative 0.205, and he is averaging 5.88 tackles per game. That's going to do it for our 2020 players, which are the top players at the various positions among the G5 through week 11.
All right. I'm looking here at what we got live on Twitter, and I'm just not making sense of the math. We've got a whole bunch of people watching and not as many retweets and likes. So if you're watching us on X, please give us a follow, a like, and a retweet. If you're listening to some podcast form here on Tuesday morning, make sure you give us a rate and review. And hopefully the whole YouTube stuff got figured out. I don't know if you still got the warning or not.
Yeah, it's still the warning. So I don't know that it's showing it or not. When I tried to watch it, it doesn't look like it's showing it. But once we get done recording, I'll check. If it's not there, I will post the recording up.
All right. And so if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening to us on live, go to our YouTube page, subscribe there so you can get updates. We've got shorts that come out all the time. So give us a follow, support us any way you can. Let's look at our waiver wire honey for the week. This week we're switching things up a little bit. Usually we've been giving you about 10 from each position. This is where we switch into our fantasy football aspect. We're just going to pick one quarterback, each of us. We did not share these prior to. One tight end, 2 running backs, and 2 wide receivers.
And it's the playoffs too, so not a lot of teams looking at.
Yeah, so we are looking strictly as like who can help us in week 12 in your fantasy matchups. Quarterback wise, I went with Owen McCown. He's 27% owned. He's a 2020 guy. Big over under in this game. When I wrote this, the over under was at 71.5. It's since gone up. Over his last 4 contests, McCown has averaged 37.9 fantasy points, averaging 43 pass attempts, 327 yards passing, and 3 touchdowns per game in that hot streak. In week 12, the Roadrunners have this date with North Texas, and this might be that 72.5 might now be the highest over-under of the week, with Washington State being second. So I want all pieces of this game. Give me Owen McCown.
I had a hard time picking one. There was 2 I wanted to pick. I wanted to pick Colton Joseph and Katin Houser.
Oh my gosh, you're such a homer.
I ended up picking Katin Houser for 2 reasons. Number one, Colton Joseph's ownership's like 27%. Katin Houser's ownership is only at 13%, so he's less owned. And Katin Houser has some pretty sweet matchups coming up. So, you know, as I told you when I talked about in the player of the week, he has been on fire since getting that starting job. 13 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. His points over that stretch, 28.58, 26.86, and 44.92. Since being named the starter, he had that huge week this week with 6 total touchdowns. Like Luke said, it really should have been 7. But the next 2 weeks, man, he has some really, really good matchups. They have Tulsa and North Texas. Looks like 2 games where there should be a lot of offense, a lot of points. And so for that reason, I did take Katin Houser as my 1 quarterback pick for the waiver wire this week.
And I was between McCown and Katin Houser, and I just over-under wise, I took McCown. So I approve of the Houser pick. Running back wise, I've chosen Aljay Henderson, Buffalo, 5% owned, and Damian Taylor, Troy, 9% owned. Also, like, I've got 2 things here to talk about Troy, so we'll get into that here second. First, Aljay Henderson, Buffalo, 5% owned. His last 4 weeks that he's played, he's got 15.8, 24.6, 13.5, and 21.9 points. He's got 142, 97, 81, and 107 yards in those games. He's seen opportunities of 19, 16, 18, and 24 opportunities. Ball State here in week 12. Ball State has led up 100 yards rushing or multi-touchdown games to the running back position in their last 2. Miami of Ohio, we had 22 carries for 105 yards, and then 2 touchdowns from Ontario Brown the week before. I think he had like 67 yards rushing. Again, this one will be a good one. I think we said Wednesday, I think it was. But I like Aljay Henderson, 5% owned. Those opportunities of 19, 16, 18, 24 still available on your waiver wire is like, that's primo. I mean, it might not feel good to enter him into your lineup because you've made it to the playoffs without him, but I think he's a good guy to have. Damian Taylor, Troy, 9% owned. Damian Taylor is averaging 16 attempts for 88 yards and half a touchdown over his last 4 games. Troy plays the Eagles of Georgia Southern here in week 12. The Eagles have allowed 176 yards rushing and about 1 touchdown on the ground over their last 4 games. We've seen a bit of an uptick here in his usage over the last 2 weeks. This can be attributed to Troy's move at quarterback to Matthew Caldwell. I believe we see a heavy dose of Damian Martinez and Gerald Green here in week 12. Honestly, if Damian Green is rostered in your league, grab Gerald Green. He's also averaging 2 carries less at 14, the same amount of yards, 88, and about half a touchdown a game. So I just give you a 2-for-1. Just get Troy's backfield. you probably can't go wrong this week with either one. They're getting about the same usage. So I kind of gave you 3. I cheated.
So I took a little bit of a different approach with my 2 picks. I gave you one guy that is definitely kind of a help now. And then the other guy maybe is a help now, but more of like a dynasty stash in your league. So the help now guy, Eli Sanders, New Mexico. He's 24% owned. He's had back-to-back monster weeks over 30 points, 34.1 and 32 points, 205 yards, 173 yards, and he's had 2 touchdowns each of the last 2 weeks. New Mexico is relying on him and Devin Dampier. The only downside, I guess, for Sanders, if there is a downside, he does have a game in week 12, but he does have a bye in week 13. And then my other pick, more of a dynasty ad, and he could have some value this week as well, especially if we hear Ontario Brown is going to be out. And that's our freshman offensive player of the week, Telly Johnson Jr., Northern Illinois, 3%. Like I said, dynasty stash for next season. Both Ontario Brown and Gavin Williams will be out of eligibility, so it'll be Telly's backfield. This past week, he had 23 carries, 141 yards, and 2 touchdowns in the absence of Ontario Brown, who suffered an injury. But again, dynasty stash, but could help you this week if Ontario Brown is not healthy and ready to play.
All right, wide receivers. Like I said, I like Ken Hauser, so who's going to throw it to? He's going to throw it to Chase Sewell. ECU, 23% rostered. Sewell had 26.8 fantasy points in the switch. In the week that the switch was made at quarterback, Sewell had that season best in targets with 10, receptions and 7, receiving yards 138. He also got his first touchdown of the season when they made that switch to Katin Hauser. He followed that performance up with his second best yardage output with 117 yards and his second touchdown. So that was back-to-back games with 100-plus receiving yards and a touchdown. Now, he only had 1 reception, and it was early on in the game, but it went for a 50-yard touchdown here in Week 11. They've got Tulsa in Week 12. Tulsa has allowed at least 100 yards receiving and a touchdown to the opposing wide receiver in 6 of their last 7 games. The game that didn't make this criteria was Temple, which Landon Morris had 97 yards and no touchdown. So he came up, without a touchdown and 3 yards, but it was Temple. I like Chase Sewell against Tulsa here. Those are pretty convincing stats for me. And then Oran Singleton, Eastern Michigan, 9% owned, 15-plus points in 5 of his last 7, 19.2 and 19.7 in back-to-back weeks, 18 receptions and 200 yards in his last 2 games. Now, I'm not counting the Kent State game because Kent State's been Kent State. But Buffalo and Miami of Ohio had a receiver who went 5 for 75 in 1 and 5 for 84 in 1. I'm trying to remember who Eastern Michigan has this week. To help me out. But I forgot to write it down. Let's see here.
They play. It's oh man, we just talked about it. It's a game that we're looking forward to.
I'm
scrolling
through this. This is giving me.
They play Ohio.
So sorry, great audio for our listeners. But so against Ohio's defense, they've allowed Buffalo and Miami of Ohio to have a receiver that goes 5 for 75 and a touchdown, 5 for 84 and a touchdown, minus Kent State here, who just got shut out. Honestly, Kent State has some pretty good wide receivers, but also having problems there at quarterback. So keeping them out. So if you want a guy who's going to get you probably about 5 and 70 to 90 yards, I think Singleton is an option. I don't love it, but it's an option.
All right, my two selections. I went with Adrian Norton from Akron, 16% owned. Had another big game this past week, 29.8 points. He had 6 catches on 11 targets, 98 yards, and he caught 2 touchdowns. The touchdowns kind of come, aren't as reliable with Adrian Norton because of that 2-quarterback system, but he definitely gets targeted a lot. He's definitely the wide receiver 1 for the Zips. And then my second choice was Justin Lockhart, San Jose State, 13% owned. He's in a high volume passing attack. Obviously, he's second fiddle to Nick Nash, but that doesn't mean he doesn't produce, because he does. He's solid each and every week. Last week, he had 5 catches on 6 targets for 128 yards. I feel like that's kind of his stat line pretty much every week. 5-6 catches, 90 to 100 yards, and maybe a touchdown or so every other week. And so, teams key in on Nick Nash, they throw it deep to Justin Lockhart. So Lockhart and Norton, 2 receivers on the waiver wire that can help you in your playoff run.
All right, tight ends. Houston Thomas, UTSA, 0% owned, probably because he's coming off of his bye week. He had 6 targets and caught for 44 yards and 2 touchdowns in the week before the bye. All the reasons I talked about Olin McCown in this one, I want all of this 72.5 point over under. His last 2 games against Memphis and Tulsa, like I said, he had caught all 6 targets for 44 yards and 2 touchdowns. Before that, he had 10 targets, 6 receptions, 132 yards, no touchdowns, but back-to-back weeks of 19.2 and 22.4 points at your tight end spot. Give me all of that in a high over-under game.
For my choice of tight end, John Michael Gillenborg, Wyoming, 27% owned. It does look like they've been getting better quarterback play with Caden Anderson. He's definitely the top receiving option for that Wyoming offense or passing offense, and he's had 4+ targets each week. Not a one of the more reliable tight end options in a landscape where tight end options can sometimes be scarce. So John Michael Gillenborg, Wyoming.
All right. That's going to do it for us. Come back and join us next week as we discuss what happened in Week 12, as well as look forward to Week 13. We give you our waiver wire guys to look for to help you out in Week 13 of the 2024 season. As always, we bring you the up-to-date on the latest news and happenings in the world of G5 college football. Again, if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're watching us on X, please give us a retweet, a like, and a follow. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please subscribe and leave those 5-star ratings and reviews. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.